I was a competitive cyclist in my 20s. It's kind of an interesting start to cycling. I was a kid that I tried everything. I played, football, basketball, baseball, hockey, tried it all and enjoyed it all. And but my real passion as a youngster was motorcycle racing, motocross racing.
Mm-hmm.
And inherent to that sport are a lot of injuries. And so I hurt myself quite a few times, and I had two really severe knee injuries. And I started cycling to rehab the knee injuries. And just started. My dad was a touring cyclist, and so I started riding the bike with him a little bit outdoors, and started to catch an interest in bike racing. I'd actually seen a track race years before I had any interest in racing the bike. My dad and I were in England, and I actually saw the World Track Cycling Championships just by chance,
Right.
and thought it looked kind of interesting at that point. And then it all came full circle. And in college, I was actually a business student, and then kind of halfway through my degree, I discovered, my real interest was in physiology. So I kind of backed up, changed majors, and continued with sports science. I have a master's degree in sports science. And then I started coaching. I was coaching as a strength and conditioning coach for high schools, different, all the high school sports, particularly football programs and that kind of thing. But I still had the passion for cycling. It's what we call like a complex system of training. Okay. And I'll just take it from the sprint side. We divided the sprint athletes training program into 4 different categories of exercises. And then there's subdivisions among those. So with the sprinters, we have about 13 different characteristics of training that we do. And we train all 13 of those year round. So there's really not a base period and a build period. And, although we do cycle through our training, we're constantly training all of those characteristics year round. With our sprinters, a lot of times that's just the case. We'll find an athlete that we feel just from observation is just probably in the wrong discipline. Mm-hmm. There's not a big, typically not a big push to direct people towards sprinting. So a lot of Mandy Markowitz, a great example. We approached her in 2014, I believe it was. And I said, look, you're a sprinter, why don't you give sprinting a full-time try? And it took a little convincing, but she did. And it really took a couple of years to kind of get the endurance out of her and kind of turn on the sprint muscle. And, but we've had some, she's obviously had some success, but that's often the case. I'll see a lot of athletes, a couple of athletes, young athletes in the area now that, in other programs that I feel like, boy, they're headed the wrong direction. They can be a decent cyclist where they're going, but if they really wanted to be, a top international competitor, they need to head another direction. Obviously, with the track endurance, I think I would say the racing certainly faster and more aggressive in Europe. On the sprint side, if you want to face the big competition, Europe is probably the place to go. The difference being with a sprinter, if you're not reaching a certain time standard, you're going to travel to Europe and you're going to do sprint qualifying. And if you're not fast enough, you're not going to even make the racing. You're just you're going to be sent back home. Or if you do make the racing, and you barely qualify in 28th place or something, then you're going to face the top qualifier. You're likely to make an early exit out of the sprint tournament. So, it's hard to go unless you're at a very high level and gain a meaningful amount of experience. It's funny you mentioned gymnasts. I have two of our young junior developing female cyclists are former. One was a former level 10 gymnast, which is just a step below an elite gymnast, and the other was a high level gymnast too. And they're showing, it's easy they build such great athletic skills and power and speed and stuff through gymnastics. So I think that's a great sport for transfer, especially the girls that grow a little too large to be gymnasts, where they're big, powerful girls, but they've developed those athletic skills through gymnastics, and now they're bringing them to the track.